former Interpol ambassador and security expert Andy Mashaile. He joins me now in our Randburg studio. Very good evening to you, Mr. Mashaile. I think one of the things that came out of the testimony of Pharaoh and Bolhuis, at least, is the concern around having moved the APSS unit from within the city manager's office within the TMPD. And there seems to have been an insinuation that this was deliberately done in order to be able to siphon funds. What is your sense about the decision to move this particular unit, and just how crucial is it? Good evening.
Good evening to you and to the production team, to the ladies and the gentlemen on my left. It is very important that we should look at the pattern when we analyze. The pattern was aimed at weakening the system, and in that space create an ecology or an ecosystem of anyone can do what they want. They wanted to create a Garden of Eden kind of an experience where anyone could just go and pick the fruit of his or her choice. It is still the responsibility of the chief of the police, the COP, to have seen that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, not being very familiar with TMPD, I'm assuming that they have an intelligence unit. So that intelligence unit should have seen what is going on, and there should also be an anti or a counter intelligence unit that could come around and say, do you know about ABCDFG, Mayor Ziyanda? And you say yes, and then they would say, have you been briefed? And then you tell them what your briefing was, and they give you a counter intelligence. Particular person 1, 2, 3, 4 intends doing ABCDFG. So in closing and not anticipating your questions, the buck stops with the COP, the chief of police, and the fact that we want to transfer past the buck and check responsibility to those at the lower levels is not on. If I were to punish anyone at TMPD, I would start with the chief of police.
Sure. I mean, those are some strong words. And I suppose, though, maybe there is a justification in the sense that it seemed to also be startling to hear how at that level there is a lack of understanding of how things work at a supply chain management level. And in this particular instance, I'm referring to Sean Bolhuis, who, when asked about purchase orders that were actually submitted after the work done, when Commissioner Sandile Khumalo asked, when is a purchase order meant to be submitted within the city, he was unclear, because from what they were looking at in their annexures, these were being submitted after the fact, and that is also a concern. So what is it, even in the training, that is missing? Because he was the one co-signing on some of these tenders that went undetected.
He either didn't know, number one. Number two, or was intimidated, because there has been an environment and an ecosystem of fear and intimidation. If you didn't comply, you were either reassigned and or you were silenced, and or they went for a campaign, a propaganda campaign against you. You and I have listened to Commissioner Yolanda Pharaoh saying she was going to be called Madlanga when she gets back to the office, just like Rivers Peace being called Madlanga. The logic in this analogy is that all those who expose the truth become painted with a brush that is aimed at intimidating you as a holder of that office. Ultimately, would want to be moved around so that you are not blacklisted, so that you cannot be blackmailed. So long story short, Ziyanda, there is more than what meets the eye and what the ear has picked up in this week at Madlanga Commission, particularly with the issues of moving the system around for convenience.
So how do we then guard against that as citizens? But also the Commission is going to be making recommendations at some stage, in particular because, and this has been an important question that came from the commissioners to say, what if there was no Madlanga Commission of Inquiry? How are we going to know about these things? And going into the future, how will we know that there are problems in TMPD, there are problems in this municipality about moving things around, not only for this expediency, but also bullying of those who might want to be rectifying some of the wrongdoings taking place under their nose?
If there was no Madlanga Commission, we would not know of these things. If we did not have a complainant who went to the police station of South Africa on the 6th of July 2025, I just said the police station of South Africa, calling you people in the media and many of us were watching, and the man who said there is criminality happening within law enforcement sponsored by municipality officials and some of our officials within SAPS, and looking also at prosecution, the NPA, and by extension, one way or the other, for the want of a better word, judiciary is also informed. So that complainant registered a case where 65 million people were looking at the docket that was being presented to us on the 6th of July 2025. So I am grateful that General Mkhwanazi came through, obviously having had worked with him and having had listened to him, Ziyanda, in 2011 at the gala dinner, saying, whilst we're enjoying ourselves, saying, me, I'm a police officer, and that whole Ghana gala dinner hall was full of ministers and serious politicians at the National Council of Provinces, one of the venues. And then he said, any one of you who commits crime, I'm going to arrest. And the clanking of the cutlery and the plates died a mysterious death. There was deathly silence in there. And you know, I got so frightened. I said, this gentleman, is he not afraid of these people? And I kept on nudging other people. And I realized that from that day onward, you remember a few months when 2011, a few months after that budget vote speech, he was removed and ultimately suspended for a year. So when you have people of that kind of integrity, you want to put them at the helm of the ship. You want to make them the captain of the ship, so that all others flowing, the 150,000 plus members of SAPS should toe the line.
Just lastly from my side, I mean, the real thing here is that this could be endemic across municipalities across the country. So in other words, other municipalities that are beyond and not within the current terms of reference. In your view then, how do we go about rectifying that? Because you can't have the Madlanga Commission everywhere, but there has to be a way to also literally flush out the system, not just in Tshwane, Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni, but countrywide.
A strategic move would be one, go to Lotto, the Lotto National Lottery Commission, and look at their social investment package. Take that money, fund the commission, and let the commission specifically focus on municipality in the 9 provinces. When you add all of those municipalities, they constitute what you and I, from given what we have seen at TMPD and EMPD, they would constitute what you call a national threat, national security threat. So you want to make sure that whilst Ntate Madlanga is young and able, and the two
I'm not sure if you'll agree.
and the two commissioners are as hot as they are, you want to make sure that you use the Madlanga Commission effectively. So I would vouch that what is going to come out of the next few days or the next few weeks, the next few months of the commission is going to compromise other municipalities. Remember, you have Bontate, Suleiman, Karim in the northwest. They are rich into the municipalities that and working hand in glove with Ntate Matala's Medicare and other tenders that they were looking for and many of those things. So I can vouch that this commission will be extended. And for us to have money, maybe we should not bother Treasury, we should go to Lottery and say, Lottery Commission, invest in justice. Yeah, so that we clean within the system, or the system is cleaned by those who have the wherewithal.
Andy Mashaile, former Interpol ambassador, thank you very much for your time this evening. Some suggestions, so maybe those who are listening may be taking those considerations and thinking deeply about them. All right, so coming up after the break, we'll reflect on the testimony of the TMPD's APSS director, Chuguru Malachi. So he had a rough time on the stand trying to explain how millions of rands were spent on these ad hoc services tenders. I'll have more on that and other aspects of testimony this week after this.